Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another exciting chapter in the Sci-fi Nunatayet series, Book 1, The Five Palms of Y. This chapter is Lost in the Stillness Caves. Now, some of the new characters we're going to be looking at is Hambly, the Hermit. He had so named himself because he had self-isolated for a 2-year period in a certain cave area on the Stillness to study parasites and viruses in the parasites, coordinated through his college alma mater. This was his 2-year mourning period following the loss of his young wife. Nunatayet's program of mourning for a spouse or a close family member was the first 2 years. You can choose what you want to do. You can work in other people's, you can continue your occupation, you can isolate, and at the end of 2 years you're reevaluated. If you weren't fully healed enough to go back to your original occupation, you might spend another year or so in a different environment in which you were giving and receiving, interacting with other people. Okay, Nunatayet was big on mental health. Okay, so Hambly the Hermit was there. Another couple are the priest line, which is called Jawath for the male, Jawatha, that's for the females. Now, it can be a husband and wife team, or it can be one spouse is a priest line, the other one has a different occupation, but in this case, we're dealing with a husband and wife team who increase their priest ability to interact with Y and hear from Y in a prophetic way and a seer way, because they're husband and wife and they regularly exchange layers of their soul during the act of intimacy. Jawath, a new group, the Cowboys. This is under Captain J. Mack. He had been in 30 years in law enforcement, retired, and then wanted to begin a new law enforcement group, and in the Central Command. And he said to all the other law enforcement around Nunatayet, send me your independent thinkers, your fallen, and your unforgiven. Because of Nunatayet, because individuals go through their orb experience at the age of 7 and interact directly with Y or his representative, that activates their spirit gifts from Y, and then go on to their spirit training for their occupation. You could not fire anyone on Nunatayet. So his first 5 years in his budget were paid for by the other law enforcement agencies who sent him people, and he selected who he wanted. Okay, so let's get started. Chapter 12, Lost in the Stillness Caves. The Jawath and Jawatha husband-wife priest team were en route to the Stillness to see General Nakobi and Shadow Leader Anichi with secret information. Mark Tomes, the shepherd inside the Stillness Forest underground prison, held by the Soul Eaters, sensed the tree's interaction with biosensors, the Strangelets. As the trees came alive, so did their mind meld abilities. They had been silenced thousands of years ago by the Soul Eaters and their AI net. A war had been fought. The Soul Eaters and their super soldiers had been placed in stasis, deep sleep, thousands of years ago. But their AI net spread out over the planet Nunatayet. In the west end of the island, the Stillness, Hambly the Hermit awaited pickup by his tribe's shadows, of the buffalo tribe of the land of the ox. Hambly had isolated himself and named himself Hambly the Hermit, as he came to the caves of the Stillness to do research and complete his sabbatical of grieving for the loss of his young wife, who had been killed in an avalanche during a skiing trip. Nunatayet, a planet ruled by tribes and family traditions, gave each individual up to 2 years to grieve for a close family member, doing whatever the individual wanted to do. It could be occupation related or charity or teaching or other endeavors. Hambly's occupation was virology and parasites. He chose to be alone and do a university study of unusual parasites found only in the caves of the Stillness Island. He had calmed that he was ready for pickup. His location on the island had been secret by the university. In the event it was discovered, he discovered something that could be patented. His location was also not visible to the usual military scans, as he was down in a series of caves, 1,000 feet or 305 meters. So Hambly had discovered a new life form. He had not calmed because he had no faith the electronic comm system was secure. One thing he had noticed is that in an electron microscope, the femto-sized parasite had a face and would look directly at the telescope as if sensing it was being observed. Inside their holding, now we're moving to another area. Inside their holding tank, the males, marked for soul extraction and their bodies to be sold as prime cuts, initiated a plan of escape as dusk fell, as the soul eaters only came during the day. The males joined their biomagnetic energies and concentrated on a group mental objective, that of unlocking the cages they were in by directing the energy flow around the lock cylinders. They were freed in 5 minutes. They then proceeded to the 12-foot or 4-meter hydraulic door of the cave passage to open it. This lock was a multi-cylinder interlock that spoke. The door said, "Insert the rod and staff of Eden." Mark Tomes, the shepherd, said, "Rod and staff is an old term for DNA, but from Eden?" The Campo's cousin said, "Our ancient ancestors are believed to be from Eden, the first garden on Nunatayet." So the oldest Campo's cousin, Tanuk, inserted his hand into the hand diagram on the door's lock. The door opened. The males proceeded quickly but quietly through a hall with multiple doors to other passages, made of a type of material they could see through. One held hundreds of containers of super soldiers deep in stasis. Excuse me. The containers were covered in shiny, multicolored salt crystals. Another door showed the Soul Eaters, 3 male androids, 5 females, in a stupor state, indicating they must be clones. The males were beginning to think this would be an easy getaway when tons of water came crashing down the hall. They were washed down miles, kilometers of passages. Meanwhile, the priest had landed and went into General Nakobe's to confer with him, his aides, and shadow leader Anichi. General Nakobe pressed a finger against his lips as he began his greetings. The priests were trained to be sensitive to body language. General Nakobe then said, "We've prepared tea outside, as we know that's something your craft enjoys," the priesthood. The priests were immediately alert. A craft applied to secret societies, not to the priest's body. So, secrets. They all proceeded outside. Thomas Moreau Jawath said to his wife, Anastasia Harbick Moray, little finger out, talking about taking the tea. She replied, "No, that's the old style for the small cups. Now use you're using the fingers through the cup and then balancing it with your hand underneath the cups. Very awkward." Okay, so it's awkward. And add lemon after the sugar. Okay. They came to a gazebo with a table set for tea. General Nakobe's aide was to pour. The priest noticed that each setting had a tea strainer over the cup that had unusual short antennae. Now the priest understood the game of the tea. The antennae would ensure a private conversation. The tea would be served from a large teapot, not individual. They wouldn't be seeping it in individual cups because that was their calm protection. Captain Harbick and Patmos had been advised of the priest's visit to the Stillness military camp. Someone had noticed that the female priest's maiden name was the same as Captain Harbick's. So Captain Harbick was wondering if this was a relative of hers. Captain Harbick and Patmos were interested in speaking to the priest as they planned a wedding in the near future. Both had very few strands of white hair left. Their love deepened every day. Okay, General Nakobe spoke to an aide. "Contact the cowboys. We need a stone rider." So Captain J. Mack of the Cowboys on the Central Command area of Nunatayet sat at the front hall desk. He liked to sit there in the morning. His people came in, walked down a long hall to the coffee pot so he could assess what their frame of mind and body was for the day. Okay. As his crew stumbled in, they all walked down the long hall to the coffee pot. Clive Barstone, sergeant of the medics, heavily breathing, walked in. Captain J. Mack asked him, "Have you seen Sergeant Johnny Twostone?" Clive replied, "He's probably still at the cemetery. He sleeps on his dead wife's grave every night." Captain J. Mack said, "How often does he do this?" And Sergeant Clive answered, "Every chance he gets." Captain J. Mack said, "How long has his wife been dead?" Sergeant Clive said, 5 years. Captain J. Mack said, "Yeah, it took me about 7 years to love again." Just then, Anna Peach walked in. 25% of the cowboys were women, but they were all called cowboys. Anna Peach was edgy, so no one spoke to her as she walked down the long hall to the coffee pot, but they all watched her intently. To be continued. I love you, and I'll see you soon.